So most of the time, people don't realize that actually what a lot of us call midlife crisis, ironically, is actually a person seeking for meaning and purpose in life because they're at a natural place where they would be doing that. And that doesn't mean that you can't be looking for purpose sooner than that. Actually, as a matter of fact, you will be. But it's kind of interesting that all the times you were wondering what purpose is, prior to that point, is a preparation for you to really look. So because purpose is like a really big thing, and I feel like nowadays people feel like they should be able to find their purpose right off the get-go when they're a child, and when you're in your teenage years, or when you start in your 20s. And I feel like that even though it's not that that's not possible, and even though it's not that you shouldn't be looking for that, and even though all that might be necessary, I feel that people don't realize that probably the best opportunity to really evaluate what their life should look like doesn't really come until later in their life. I'd say, somewhere between the 30s, at the earliest, to probably, most likely in the 40s and 60s. And there are some exceptions to that. There's some exceptions to that, but even to those exceptions, I feel like have a renewed sense of that in the 40s, from what I can tell. And so I kind of just wanted to say that, just kind of add a little bit into the subject, because I feel like purpose is such a misunderstood subject. Having said that, coming back, so if you don't understand that that's what's happening, then when you're in your 40s, you'll be feeling like you're being indulgent. You feel like you're being ungrateful. You'll feel like you're kind of complaining about nothing, when you don't realize that just naturally you've done your best, you've reached your limit, and now you're doing what's necessary. So like you'll be like, oh, so it will feel like what you're pursuing, your want, is superfluous, that it's indulgent, and it will feel really vulnerable, without understanding that what you're trying to do is naturally, without understanding, you're trying to push yourself into the next development level, to a higher level, where you evaluate, how can I really bring everything I have together? If I've spent 20 some years growing up, and then I spent the next 15 years or so, or 20 years, searching for my limit, and I've experienced a lot, and I can say that I understand life now. What do I do with the rest of it? How can I use everything I have in the best of ways? And it's a very important thing. But all of a sudden, if you start reevaluating literally, you're reevaluating everything in your life, that feels very indulgent. It seems like you're compromising your family. Your family will have and that's, I think, why other people call it a crisis. Because the moment you start doing that, people are like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? It's when they start, people start buying like, the red car or the sports car. Why do you need that for? You don't need that. Actually, I would say you do. And so now, having explained why a want feels so vulnerable and so indulgent, now I think you can see what a want looks a little bit better. Then a want is basically a need becoming mature, and then a need pushing you to the next level of need. So if you're in the physical, it pushes you. If you are good with all your functionalities, like you can move your body parts, you know where to find food, you know where to find shelter, you know where you can find a mate and have sex with, and you can do these things, but it's not systematized, then the best thing to do next is stabilize that and see whether you can get it on a regular basis, which is to systematize it, which is the second one. Once you have that, then you need to be with a group of people, especially if you can systematize this for yourself, then it's better to do that with a group of people. And if you can do that in a group of people, then it's actually best to learn how to do that effectively in terms of what your role is in society, and how you fit in, what your service is. And then once you do all that and your societal position is secured, then you can sort of reevaluate life itself and kind of question everything. But can you see that, like, you need the foundations for all that? Now, if you start earlier, then maybe those foundations can become secure sooner. In that case, you could start this process at an earlier age in terms of more consciously, when I say it, because it's not like you're starting this at an early age. These are needs. So as I said, these are always present. So your need for purpose is always present. Your need for self-transcendence is one above it, which is called self-transcendence, which is where you're beyond having to worry about yourself, which is actually what I explained kind of in presence. Once you explore what life is about, then you come down to the practicalities of just being present with life, because you've got that all worked out. If you don't have any more questions and you kind of understand what brings meaning, and you feel like you understand life enough well for yourself, you just can be present. You can just be, right? And it's at the highest level. So, but you have moments where you're present, and you have a need to be present. You have moments where you will wonder about meaning of life. Even after you feel like you've considered it, you'll still figure it out for other people. And you need a role in society, and you need people that will be loyal to you, that you can be loyal to, and you need a system for yourself, and you need to know that you, like, fundamentally, where you can find the individual things that you need for survival. And so those are ever present. They're always present, and they're always working together and with each other. And so now, if you understand all this, then you understand that a want is a need that are above the second rung and above. And on top of that, it's also what pushes you to the next rung. If, like, primarily, let's say, for instance, you're working in your second rung. Like, let's say, for instance, you've had a rough childhood and you didn't have a chance to really get good routine habits or how to figure out a system. It was always chaotic. And so now you're working on that. And then when you work on that and that starts working, then your want will naturally go to the next. So your want is your growth edge. And most people don't understand your want is your growth edge. It's actually, that's why it feels indulgent. And if we don't understand that, then we'll try and push the want away, making yourself miserable and keeping yourself from growth, because the want is what gives you the extra energy to be able to go to the next level. If you're always struggling, it's hard to grow. And so once the rung becomes stable, then you start having a bit more capacity to look beyond that. That's why you start wanting. That's why you start wanting something that you didn't need before, right? Can you see the languaging? You don't need that. Yeah, that's exactly the point. You don't need it. For that stage, you don't need it anymore. And that's why it's a want. And so you can see that, the languaging betrays the unconscious, where, oh, you're ready for growth. So when you start wanting something, you're starting to see, oh, what comes next? Which invariably will compromise the previous rung, because now you need to draw resources from this rung to push you to the next rung. And that's why it is fundamentally compromising. And that's why it feels indulgent and excessive. So let's say, for instance, if you're in the esteem rung, then one of the key things that happens is you may need to work harder. And as you start working harder, you will not be as much with your family. And so, and as that happens, the relationships that you build so hard will start actually feeling like complaining to you. And then you need to start learning about work-life balance, right? That's a whole thing. But having said that, whenever you start allocating your time in one place, you start compromising more of your time somewhere else. If you are working a security rung and you have a good routine going, and all of a sudden your family wants to do something with you, or you have to spend time there, it's not going towards your system, right? So whatever it is, like if you have a system, then you're not as adaptable, right? Can you see? Each rung compromises the next, because you have to draw resources from that rung to push up to the next. And so that's why a want fundamentally will feel indulgent. But at the same time, as you get the want starts energizing, ironically, also the previous rung. Like I was telling about, the car helped the person have more energy. It helped them in the second rung. And so the car would provided the person with more comfort and with more leisure, right? So it is more wasteful, more leisure, so that it boosted their energy so that they could be more present with their family, which made them happy, and then that gave that person more energy to go back into work and do a good job. So that's why it's called an ecosystem, and that's actually why it really need to be seen as an ecosystem. And so want is something that actually draws from your previous rung, but also gives to your previous rung in terms of luxury, and it is. And a want is a need that wants to grow. So if you understand that, then we can see a want is a very important necessity